about the genocide in Gaza. You are warping. You are warping. What are you telling us to vote for Biden when he's committing a genocide? You tell my parents he's committing a genocide. The Democratic Party is already debating funding a genocide.
AOC has a massive platform. She's like a conventionally attractive, beautiful woman. Like she has a huge social media following. It's like people don't want to believe that someone like her is more dangerous to the movement than someone like Trump, I think, because at least he's telling us what he's doing. Like she's being shady, and she has a lot of shady connections and people funding her. And obviously her votes are shady, and she's a Zionist and she doesn't care about Palestinian human rights. So that's why I decided to do it.
Jen, tell us, because I saw your post about this, and I think this story had gone viral some months ago when you were initially dismissed from your position as a sexual forensic examiner for the state of New York. So tell us what was the context and why they fired you.
I used to work at one of the main hospital conglomerates in New York City called Mount Sinai Hospital. I worked there for many years. I used to work as a registered nurse there, and I concurrently worked as a sexual assault forensic examiner there. In October of 2023, when this horrific genocide began, I started posting a lot more on my social media about Palestine. I've known about Palestine, I've known about Gaza for quite some time now. And I knew that I was taking a risk in terms of, I guess, job security by being vocal that I was against this, just knowing the reality of working in a healthcare institution, especially in New York City. And but it was like a risk that I just understood and took. And then I was posting about it. I was getting a lot of basically hate from colleagues and just, I don't know, contacts from my social media. But in December of 2023, when the New York Times put out the article Screams Without Words, I did read the article and I was just horrified by what I read, especially considering I felt like the article had no concrete evidence. It had no evidence of really anything. And they were, as I viewed it, they were using that to continue as a justification to continue the genocide, because I believe at that time there was a ceasefire, either right around that time or in smack in the middle of it. But I saw the way that I perceived it was that they were going to use these claims of mass rape as a justification to continue this. And I did read the article. I read the report that they put out. I couldn't find any evidence anywhere. So I knew that I'd been a sexual assault forensic examiner for a few years at that point, and I felt like I could offer something in terms of using my professional experience and qualifications to just add my voice to the chorus that was saying this is completely wrong. I mean, obviously nothing justifies a genocide, but the justification being used, it's completely shoddy. There's no evidence behind this. So that's what I did. I decided to make a well-researched and well evidence and sourced video just on social media and I did say I was a New York State certified sexual assault forensic examiner. That's what I did for my role. And reading that article that was just being, plastered all over the place in Western media, I said simply that this evidence would never stand in court. and they basically had no evidence of anything. So I think that's what was you. I was in Palestine at the in May, like April, May 2024 is when I started getting calls from the New York District Attorney's office that one of the cases that I did was going to trial, and then that they needed me to come and testify. And actually, I let them know, I'm out of the country, I'm not available, I'm in Palestine, and I was subpoenaed, and then it just turned out to, essentially be used as a justification to get me fired from my role. There was, my supervisors at the time, they said they had never heard of any forensic examiner getting subpoenaed to testify. Um, they could have just easily gotten an alternate. And then my social media and the posts that I did was used. The district attorney's office had an entire evidentiary hearing about my social media and the posts that I made, and pointed it to used it as evidence and a claim that I had no they basically discredited me. They said that since I spoke on social media and denied these, mass rape hoaxes, that that I have no qualifications anymore, that they would never use me as an expert witness again, because I, basically was a rape denier. So that's essentially what happened.
Yeah, and I mean, what's crazy to me too is that your social media posts had nothing to do with the immediate task of your job in the state of New York, correct? So I mean, this is just like they're basically targeting you for your political activism on an issue that is unrelated.
New York District Attorney's Office, sorry, my cat is the New York District Attorney's Office like went to my job and basically told them that I had no credibility anymore, since I like specified online that I was a New York State certified sexual assault forensic examiner. So my question to them was, like, if healthcare workers aren't able to, kind of state what role they have and what their qualifications are, then who should be speaking on these things anyways? Like, because the New York Times was pointing to an architect, a dentist, and I believe like a EMS worker. I mean, all of these like figures have been completely discredited. The emergency services organization that the New York Times referenced, like they were responsible for like the 40 beheaded babies claims, like all of these just wild claims with no forensic evidence backing anything. And yeah, so that's essentially what happened. The district attorney's office went to Mount Sinai, told them they would never use me as an expert witness again, and then Sinai came to me and said they had no choice but to fire me, since it was an essential component of my job. Mind you, my estimate is I had probably done at least like 100 to 150 sexual assault cases at that point, and that was the only time that I had ever been called to testify, which goes to show how little the state of New York prioritizes sexual violence.
Jeremy Scahill, who's the OG of the anti-war journalism, he did a piece for The Intercept debunking that New York Times article that I think came out at a time that Israel was heightening its assault on Gaza. And he showed what you're saying, that there was actually no evidence for mass rapes by Hamas. And also, like you said, the two so-called journalists that did this story, they were not real journalists, and many other disparities and problems with that article. But I think we're used to this. I mean, with the New York Times, I mean, when it comes to anything that does not involve the U.S., any international or so-called foreign policy affairs, I mean, I like to call it imperialism, because I think foreign policy is a misnomer, because it gives it this kind of innocuous sounding name, but it's not really foreign policy, it's imperialism. But anything that is about the U.S. empire, I think the New York Times is not very trustworthy. And what's crazy to me is a lot of times they just say that, our sources say, and the sources could be anything. They don't specify. It's usually the CIA.
So actually, the one of the journalists that New York Times used, Anat Schwartz, she was like intelligence with the IOF before, and actually the gray zone, well, like the electronic intifada has done like, completely debunked all of this as well. So they've done a great job.
Yeah, and I mean, what's crazy to me is also they recycle the lies because if you remember, I mean, I don't remember because I was a kid, but I read about it as an adult. So during Saddam's invasion of Kuwait, the daughter of a Kuwaiti ambassador, I think Nayira testimony, I think she was not even using a real name. She gave the testimony that Saddam is taking the babies out of the incubators, and then later it was, it was evident that,
Yeah,
that was a hoax. I mean, they're recycling the same thing with Hamas now that, they mass
exactly.
murdered babies and
Yeah,
decapitated
and
babies.
the district attorney, the assistant district attorney who was actually in charge of my case, she, I found pictures later, after I realized I was being, the subject of a witch hunt, essentially. She was at the Sheryl Sandberg like fake mass rape hearings at the UN. So that's one of the New York district attorneys that we have. And actually, when Mount Sinai was firing me, they came to me and said that my social media and the things that I've said online about, just the mass rape hoax and how I saw no evidence for any of this as the reason why the victim didn't get justice in her case because the assistant district attorney didn't get the rape conviction. But it sounds like she was too busy trying to get me fired and discredit me.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, what's crazy to me too is because I'm an academic, and in the Western universities, I mean, fortunately, I've been in teaching in Tehran and Lahore, where you can speak more freely about Palestine. But in the Western academia, it's one of the most censored subjects, and there are numerous professors that have been either suspended or sacked. Some examples, prominent examples, are David Miller in the UK and in the US. Norman Finkelstein and Stephen Stalatia. Norman Finkelstein's stories is crazy. I mean, Alan Dershowitz, the Jeffrey Epstein's lawyer, he's the one that actually started a campaign against him. So there are numerous professors that have been suspended or sacked or forced into silence.
People are still facing consequences. I just heard a story yesterday of a social worker at Sinai getting fired over having a sticker up saying God, like, let Gaza live, something like that. So, that's kind of like the trade-off. You don't really have job security if you support Palestinian human rights.
I mean, a lot of it is not even like, it's not even ideological. I mean, if you're teaching basic history about settler colonialism, about the creation of Israel, like, if you're just telling the facts, um, they're just the facts. I mean, they're nothing. And this is actually what happened in the 2000s at Columbia University, because there were a number of Zionist students who felt threatened by the teachings of people like Rashid Khalidi, Joseph Mas'ad, and Hamid Abashi, and George Saliba. These are the professors at Columbia's Mises department, and they started a whole witch hunt against them. But they were just teaching. I mean, they might have certain ideological commitments, but I've actually been to Rashid Khalidi's classes, for example, and he's very fair. I mean, the way he actually narrates the history of settler colonialism and the creation of Israel, he's very fair, and he was just teaching them the historical facts, and they still came after him. So yeah, I mean, the whole thing, I mean, it's really just bizarre and psychotic and sociopathic at some level, I would say. The way the issue of Palestine is treated within American professional circles. But regarding that, because I mean, it does seem to be, I mean, when it comes especially to the elites and say university administration or the medical administrations that you were dealing with, there does seem to be a major crackdown on speech about Palestine. But I'm also seeing a shift. I mean, especially when I see like Gen Z accounts, even within people who are kind of normies, they're not exactly political. Even with some normie accounts, I'm seeing a lot of support for Palestine. So do you think that things are, I mean, as an American, do you think things are changing in America? Is public opinion shifting more towards Palestine and Palestinian liberation? Or do you think that things have remained the same compared to, say, 5 or 10 years ago?
I mean, there's definitely a shift now. I think like more people do feel more comfortable to just kind of, say things like stop the famine, things like that. It's people are still going to face consequences if they do anything to support or like offer support to, Palestinian resistance of like occupation and apartheid and war crimes. But like, I think a lot of the people speaking up now are just, yeah, pretty like liberal and kind of like the liberal Zionism angle. But I think maybe that's just in the US, but around the world, like, you just can't, they can't hide it anymore. It's just, there's no amount of propaganda or whitewashing at this point that can sort of just rebrand like the settler colony of Israel at this point. Like the crimes and the images and all of this that people have seen, especially young people on social media, they can't come back from this. So I think like the end is coming at some point. I don't know when it is, but I mean that's all that quote unquote Israel had, like the narrative, like the media and the narrative and their PR. And now that that's gone, now that Gen Z and millennials and younger generations just don't see, like, don't support this, they're not going to be brainwashed by this because it's just the crimes have gone way too far for too long, and you can't really come back from this the way that I see it. So the end is coming, and I don't know when that's going to be, but yeah, I mean, there's definitely a shift.
What's I think scary about it is that as Israel is losing the PR war and the media war, they're getting more violence on the ground. So that is the scary thing. And I mean, I think this happens with a lot of settler colonialists. I mean, happened with the French in Algeria when they were about to lose Algeria, and the Algeria had the independence movement. They got more violence. I mean, I think this is the scary consequence of them losing the media war, is that they also get more violence. But do you think that the U.S. will withdraw I mean, we had that amendment that was sponsored by the MAGA politician. I'm forgetting her name right now.
Marjorie
Uh,
Taylor
yeah,
Greene.
yeah. So the amendment that was sponsored by her, and she wanted to limit the weapons that were being sent to Israel. So do you think anything will change at the high political level when it comes to, I mean, because we talked about the public opinion and the media, but at the elite level and the political funding level, do you think anything will change within our lifetime?
I don't know, because I think the American political establishment is just too sold out. Like it's just run by corporate interests. It's not just that all of these the vast majority of these politicians are funded by, AIPAC and other like Zionist groups. They're funded by the pharmaceutical industry. They're funded by weapons. They're funded by big food. Like, so I mean, these are like the corporate interests that run America that basically have stakes in colonialism and settler colonies like Israel. So I don't know if I have faith in the American political establishment to, especially change from within. I think if there's going to be changes globally, it has to come from the global South, like, and countries uniting against these imperialistic aggressors, because the US has way too much at stake, in their corporate interests to to stop. And obviously they're not moved by anything regarding humanity. So no, I don't think that any of these people are just going to wake up one day and like have a conscience. Like they have way too much like financial capital like at stake.
That's right. Yeah, and I think it would take either a mass movement within the U.S. or, like you said, just the global South countries, Middle Eastern countries establishing sufficient deterrence. So no, I think you're very right about that. And I mean, I think this is the problem with Zohran Mamdani. I mean, you're in New York, and Zohran might become the next mayor. But my worry with Zohran is that he's just going to turn into another AOC if there's not a mass movement supporting him. Because once you enter that system, the American political machine and establishment, even though I mean he'll be a mayor, so he'll be somewhat immune from the actual core of the DC politics. Yeah, I mean, if there's not a mass movement behind him, I don't think he can fulfill his promises.
The Democratic Party has just as much blood on its hands as the Republican Party do. They just do it in a more, backdoor way. And the whole reason why Zohran Mandami has had so much support, he's actually he's actually my assembly member, um, is because of his support for Palestinian human rights. That's why he had so much support. And you can see now just like the watering down of everything. It's of course that's happening. Like he's not going to get the support of Democrats like Elizabeth Warren and AOC and Bernie Sanders if he doesn't adopt a more liberal Zionist view, because that's what they all are. I mean, they're still Zionists.
Regarding that, let's get to our favorite politician, Alexandria Ocasio Cortez. I think we all saw the viral video where we're confronting her. And the thing is, she's just so incoherent politically. I mean, anytime she speaks, especially about imperialism, about foreign policy, I'm just like, what are you even saying? Like, none of her, like, just nothing makes sense. But yeah, tell us, because I mean, a lot of our viewers are based in Middle East and South Asia. So they might not know who this Alexandria Ocasio Cortez is, or AOC as we call her in America. So tell us who she was and what was the context of you confronting her.
So Alexandria Ocasio Cortez, I believe, first became a congresswoman in I don't know, it was like 2018 or 2020, something like that. Or maybe it was 2020, but her documentary came out in 2018.
I think it was.
Okay.
No, I think it was 2018 because I remember I was in New York at the time.
Yeah, I mean, she had a whole documentary that came out. It was kind of like this like rags to riches story, and she was the underdog and was like fighting for the little man. And I think a lot of people, bought it. I mean, I did. I know that I did. And she just, she's framed herself as like being from the Bronx and like fighting for like the working New Yorkers, blah, blah, blah. And, actually, I live in her district in Queens. So she's my congresswoman. And I don't know. I hadn't really been paying too much attention to her like over the past few years. I think during COVID, I was still an ER nurse at the time during COVID. So like a lot of shit happened there in New York. But I remember like at that time, like maybe that year, like she would do lives a lot and kind of like speak about just, I don't know, just like I would watch her lives and feel like somewhat comforted that at least, it seemed like one politician like cared about what was going on and what we were going through as healthcare workers, et cetera, et cetera. But I think at the beginning of the genocide, October 2023, maybe she said something. I don't remember exactly. It was first like every single American politician was like, yeah, we support, Israel's right to exist, blah, blah, blah. But I think maybe she said something pretty soon on about like, Palestinians shouldn't be mass slaughtered, something like that. But then after that, I just, I started to notice that it's like, where is she? We haven't heard from her. Like, where is this congresswoman, and then there were like multiple votes that, I mean, she's done multiple votes that she supported the Iron Dome. She like voted about this, anti-Zionism as anti-Semitism. Just there, she has a whole, list of like votes that she's like basically been in line like with Zionism. And then, actually the final straw for me, I was like, I can't like, obviously I don't support anyone that hasn't been like clearly and plainly speaking out for Palestinian human rights. And additionally, like, you're a congresswoman, you have more power, you have more of a platform, you have all of this that we don't have. Like, why is the average person that cares like doing way more than any of these politicians? But when she was telling us to vote for Joe Biden, that was just like, that's not something that for me that she would be able to come back from. And then she was chastising us for not wanting to vote for Biden. Obviously this man is like decrepit with like basically zero mental function left, like, and physical abilities. Like, why should we? And he's been full-throatedly supporting a mass slaughter campaign for the past year. Like, why should we vote for him? No. And then she switched to supporting Kamala, and it was just like she told us that at the Democratic convention or whatever, like Kamala's they're working tirelessly for a ceasefire. That was a lie. And I think the article came out about that, like exposing that it was, she knew the Democrats never asked once for a ceasefire from Netanyahu, and like every 15 hours they're sending more weapons to slaughter babies. So I saw that she was doing like a town hall, and I was like, I'm gonna go. And um, yeah. So actually, it was even hard to find the address of this town hall. My friend and I registered, and neither of us received the location. So I know that she's screening, like they're screening like attendees. Basically, it was like this mad dash before trying to figure out like where this was. With my investigative skills and my contacts, I was able to figure it out like last minute. And when I showed up, like it was at a school, and there was already like a crazy line out wrapped around the block. Like I was like, I don't even know if we're gonna be able to get in. And then my friend showed up. We did get in.
And I want to know what you're doing about the genocide in Gaza. You are war criminals. You are war criminals. What were you telling us to vote for Biden when he's committing a genocide? Oh my God, he's committing a genocide. The Democratic Party is already debating funding a genocide in Palestine. I'm a nurse. Shame on you. What are you doing? What are you doing for the genocide in Gaza? You haven't done anything. You're not doing anything. Shame on you. You're a liar. You are a liar. You were telling us to vote for Biden.
Like these supporters all have like AOC gear on. They're like, I was like, this is gonna be a hostile crowd. I knew it was. But I was also like, there's not gonna be anyone else that like calls her out. No one else thought to do this. And yeah, I was super nervous. I knew it was gonna be a hostile crowd, but I didn't expect that level of hostility. I actually like was planning on saying something else, but just like the reaction from the crowd, just like everything went out of my brain. And the first thing that came to my head was just like war criminal. And that's kind of everything that I said. And she never addressed any of the things that I brought up. I know that she knew that it was about Palestine. And basically, I got shouted down. I figured I was going to get arrested there, so I didn't have like any of my stuff on me. My friend took it. They like threw me out of the building. And then I was getting like chastised outside, like because I was still going on about AOC, and like all of her supporters, they were literally like laughing at me and like telling me to shut up. And like it's just like it's disgusting. I feel like the response from like Democrats and liberals is it's worse than the crowds at the like conservative and Republicans, because we've seen the videos from them too, and it's like people are like, let them speak. But like the liberals and the Democrats, it's just like, yeah, they support free speech or whatever until you say something that they don't like, and they don't like you attacking their like Democratic liberal queen. Essentially, AOC has a massive platform. She's like a conventionally attractive, beautiful woman. Like she has a huge social media following. It's like people don't want to believe that someone like her is more dangerous to the movement than someone like Trump, I think, because at least he's telling us what he's doing. Like she's being shady, and she has a lot of shady connections and people funding her, and obviously her votes are shady, and she's a Zionist and she doesn't care about Palestinian human rights. So that's why I decided to do it.
Yeah, and I mean, what you're saying about her supporters, and I saw, there was one guy, like a middle-aged man, who stand up and started like shouting at you or pointing at you. I couldn't hear what he was saying, but it was just like he was just so like steadfast in defending her. But I mean, I think every movement can get cultish. I think even anti-imperialists can get cultish at times. But with the Democratic Party, I think it's a new level of cult, because I remember Cornel West was running for president, and there were all these Democratic media and pundits saying, "What the hell is he doing? He's going to take the votes away from Biden or Kamala." And even Forbes did an investigative, reporting into his finances, being like, "Oh, he's broke," and there wasn't much there. It was just that he doesn't have much money because he apparently owes a lot of taxes and went through some divorces. But they were trying to, pitch that as, oh, look at how evil he is. He's broke and he owes money in his taxes. Just because Cornel West might have taken, a couple thousand votes away from Biden or Kamala. And I mean, the thing with AOC is that, I mean, these people, I mean, within the right, we're actually seeing people calling for more like independence from the Republican Party. So, the Elon Musk, talked about starting another party. But within with the Democrats and the progressives, like AOC and Bernie Sanders, they're just kind of sticking to the Democratic Party. And so it does have that element of, I mean, it might be an exaggeration, but somewhat a cultish character.
Yeah, and I think that figures like AOC and Bernie, it's like they allow people, progressives or people who want change to like still have faith in the American political establishment because they see them as like fighting for, their rights or whatever. But it's like I don't see that, and I think that they can be even more dangerous because they're essentially just like controlled opposition. And we shouldn't have faith in the American political establishment. And like the longer that this goes on, like it's just the more crimes that they're able to commit because people like just want to believe that these figures are doing something right when they're not. They're all and they're all in the same club.
The last issue that I want to cover, it might be a little bit longer than the rest because it's so recent, is your trip to Iran. So we saw on your social media you had a bunch of videos and pictures about your trip to Iran, and it seems like you had gone with some foreign delegation there with other journalists and activists. So can you tell us the context of what that was about and why you went to Iran?
Sure. Yeah, so I was invited to go to Iran with a group of like media and journalists from around the world. And it was the invitation was extended because of the 12 days imposed war that Iran had just suffered by, the Zionist entity and the US regime. So that's the whole reason that I went. And I wouldn't have gone to Iran if that hadn't happened, if they weren't getting bombed for 12 days straight. And I guess the leaders of this Sobe Media Festival, that's who I was invited by, they had the idea to invite foreign journalists because there's essentially a media blockade on Iran. And it's not like any major media outlets are covering anything that happened there. They were getting bombed for 12 days straight. And as we know, like 70% of the weapons that Israel has comes from the US. So more likely than not, a lot of those weapons were American, and American weapons were killing Iranians. So they thought to invite the journalists just so they could get their stories out. It was 12, over 1,000 people were killed. All nuclear scientists were targeted along with their families. Entire apartment blocks essentially were just decimated. And that's the whole reason that I went. It was a short trip, and it was incredible to be able to go and meet the Iranians who have suffered so much under brutal U.S. sanctions. Not just U.S. I mean, the U.S. imposes sanctions on places like Iran, but it's also any other country that wants like a relationship with the U.S. They have to, basically accept those sanctions as well and not trade with them. And the Iranian people have suffered immensely. But in the most recent assault on Iran was that 12 days imposed war. So that's why we went.
Yeah, and so can you tell us about the extent of the damage that the U.S.-Israeli war imposed on Iran? So what did you see in terms of the damage and the sites that you were visiting?
Yeah, so I'll I think there were like three main, I guess. Well, I mean, the city of Tehran is massive. So even though they were getting bombed for 12 days, most of the city is still intact. I mean, it's a massive city, but the the where the airstrikes occurred, the damage is immense. They were all mass casualty incidents. So they took us around to a lot of the neighborhoods that were targeted. These were residential neighborhoods. These were civilians. These were scientists living with their families, their children. Many of them, the neighbors' apartments were also destroyed, things like that. Uh, Israel also bombed like streets, shopping centers. They targeted a EMS vehicle. There were healthcare workers that died. I know a hospital was targeted. We didn't get to see the hospital. We didn't get to see the hospital outside of the jail or the prison that we were taken to. We were taken to Evan Prison, where it was struck. I think it was 7 airstrikes that occurred there. Over 100 people were killed at Evan Prison. And then we were also taken to the IRIB headquarters, which, we all saw the video of Sahar Amani that was giving her live report, and the entire, building is like
Yeah.
crumbling down behind her. The building is completely demolished. And it
And
was a really,
you have a picture. You have a picture with Sahar Imami, correct? I saw
yeah,
a picture of you.
yeah. I got to meet her and hear from her, and just, it just is a testament to the strength of the journalists there. But that building, which was a beautiful building, it was a glass building and it was massive. It's completely all bombed out. You walking through it, you just, you smell just fire, and just there were journalists that were killed there. And it was targeted for that reason. And that's what Israel and the US does. They target journalists, they target media workers, they target anyone, healthcare workers that are sharing the truth of their crimes. And it's just an extension of what they've already shown us that they do, like again and again and again, like literally going after the headquarters of their main media institution in Iran.
Yeah, and I mean, and what's crazy is that we actually have real evidence, videos of journalists being killed by Israel. So I think the notorious example in the U.S. that got, I think, decent coverage was Shirin Abu Aghla of Al Jazeera, and they just shot her, and there's a video of it, and she's wearing the whole press, uh, uh, hats, safety hats, and everything, and it's just insane. And I mean, inside Iran too, I think a lot of journalists, especially the ones that come on like English language medias, were advised to delete their WhatsApp, and because apparently WhatsApp was also communicating sensitive data of Iranian users to Israel. That's what Iran alleges, and I think it's a credible allegation because we know what Meta does. Meta has a very close relationship with U.S. and probably Israeli intelligence. So yeah, and yeah, so no, but I think you're right because I haven't actually been to Tehran since the attacks. Even though I'm from there, I haven't had a chance to go back yet. But talking to my friends, they say that you don't really see the damage that much because it's a massive city, and also Iran defended itself to a great extent. So I mean, even though Israel and U.S. had some level of air superiority, they still, through their missile programs and other defenses, they were able to hold Israel back. And you don't really see the destruction unless you're taken there. And I think you were taken there as part of that foreign delegation. And then what else? So what was there something like an experience that was very endearing or interesting while you were in Iran, or something that you didn't like? You can also cover things that you didn't like.
But we got to meet a lot of, scientists, and they explained like what they're actually doing in their nuclear program, and all of the research, and just amazing things that they're doing there. And me being someone that is a healthcare worker, and I've worked in hospitals, I was an ER nurse, I'm now a nurse practitioner, learning about what they're doing as far as like pharmaceuticals was pretty incredible to me. And it even ran through my mind of like, maybe this is one of the reasons why this nuclear program was targeted, because that's one of the main reasons that Iran is developing their nuclear program for pharmaceuticals, especially for cancer diagnostics and treatment. And we heard again and again of the incredible like treatments Iran is coming out with for cancer, and even heard from someone who spoke to us that there was one researcher who was like planning on releasing a supposed cure to cancer next year. And at the nuclear like research site that we were taken to, I was really interested when these two scientists were explaining like one of their cancer treatments, and it's like it was, I'm forgetting the name, but it was basically like plasma therapy, and how it's being developed as cancer treatment. And I was asking him all these questions about it because I'd never heard of this before. Like the standard cancer treatment in the US is chemotherapy and radiation and things like that. We're not doing I mean, as far as I know, like I don't think that there's any like plasma therapy that is being developed in the way that they're doing it in Iran. And I was having him explain it to me, and he was basically saying like this like the plasma therapy, it's very antioxidant. So cancer cells, like they're very oxidative. So it's basically they target cancer cells in terms of the way that it works in Western medicine is when you get cancer treatment, it targets all your cells. And this treatment that they're developing in Iran, like specifically only targets cancer cells, just because of the way that cancer cells are like way more oxidative than like, our regular like human cells. And it really came across my mind. I was like, maybe this is one of the main reason, a major reason why it's being targeted. Like the pharmaceutical industry is a like $1 trillion like multinational, global like criminal cartel. Like they don't want anything to get in the way of their insane profits. They don't want treatment. That's why, the US healthcare system, we don't invest in cures. We invest in, lifelong chronic disease treatment that these corporations want people to be on for the rest of their life. But like if you cure someone, then like there goes your profit. So I didn't think that, I mean, I can only say like what I was told and what I experienced there, but it didn't seem to me like, Iran in any way, shape, or form was interested or actually working on any sort of nuclear weapon. Like they want nuclear power, and they want this nuclear program for power, for electricity, but also for agricultural and pharmaceutical reasons. And I guess that was a bit surprising to me to hear, because I maybe like many people in the world who don't want to see any harm come to Iran, or the people of Iran and the Palestinian people, and just, I mean, anyone in the world. We don't want to see anyone be harmed by US imperialism. I guess we would think like maybe they would want to develop one just like for deterrence, but I didn't get that sense at all.
Yeah, and a lot of people say that they should actually develop nuclear weapons now for deterrence after what has happened, because U.S. and Israel blew up the negotiations, and it's just like it seems like these negotiations are being done in bad faith, and they're not real. But also, one thing I want to add to contextualize your trip, just for our viewers and kind of my take on it, is that I think Iran is stepping up its PR game now, because I don't remember invitation of to foreign journalists to come and give them tours, and also to actually so I don't remember this being as frequent. It seems to be more frequent now. I could be wrong, but my impression is that it's more frequent now. But what's interesting to me is people like yourself who accept these invitations and go, and then you get these allegations that they're Iran agents or Russia agents or China agents. But what the U.S. does and what the West does, especially the U.S., is that they have whole funding mechanisms and operations to bring native informants, so people like myself who have brown faces but an imperialist mindset, to bring them to the U.S. and fund them and give them resources in order to advocate for regime change or sabotage back in their home countries, whether they're from Venezuela, Cuba, Iran, doesn't matter. So all the countries that are subjects of U.S. sanctions, and even not U.S. sanctions, if they want to orchestrate a color revolution or other destabilization, they do bring human resources from the former colonies and from the global South countries. And I mean, this is very prominent. I mean, there's even like funding information on this. And I mean, I think one good thing about Trump's policies was that I mean, for the wrong reasons, but he wanted to limit some of the USAID programs that actually go to these kind of, soft cultural war and regime change wars. But what I think what Iran is doing in this case, they're not bringing you in order to advocate for regime change in America. They're bringing you to tell the world that we are also human beings and we have a right to defend ourselves and we have a right to
that's
sovereignty.
what I've kind of like. I mean, I've gotten a lot of criticisms, and I've gotten a lot of criticism about going. I think the overwhelming majority has been positive, but that was kind of, I haven't like addressed everything yet. I mean, there's still a lot of things that I want to say about my time there and what I experienced and like what I saw. But it takes time to do all these things. But the response that I have right now, I mean, it's just I continue to say I wouldn't have gone 1000%. I wouldn't have been there. I wouldn't have been invited if Iran wasn't getting bombed for 12 days. So like I think, I see it as, I think that they don't really, as you said, like they're focusing more on PR and trying to get their story out, that they don't want to be bombed by the US and Israel. But I don't think that they really have much other choice at this point than to invite foreign journalists and try to get their story out, because of all, there's a media blockade. And, especially being an American and seeing the way that Iran and the Iranians are portrayed, it's like you would think that they're all like three-headed monsters that are just going to kidnap, Americans as soon as they like breathe their air and like hold them ransom. Like, so yeah, like I think it's really important what they're doing to get their story out. And just essentially, like, I think Iranians just want to, decide their own country for themselves. They don't want to, be victim of US imperialism, and they're really paying the price of that because they're not bending to the US.
Yeah. And I mean, no, about the three-headed monsters. I mean, Fox News and the right-wing media is now like spreading allegations that there are Iranian sleeper cells in the U.S. And I'm like, and Tucker Carlson even asked this question from the Iranian president Masoud Pezeshkian during the interview, being like, "Are there Iranian sleeper cells?" And I'm like, what are they talking about? Because the Iranian diaspora is actually one of the biggest Gusana diasporas in the world. Like the Iranian diaspora in the U.S. is like so pro-regime change. They're all, like, I'm just like, well, like what? I mean, what are these claims? And I mean, there are actually real Mossad sleeper cells in Iran that were orchestrating the attack. And I mean, I think they probably maybe took you to some of those sites too that they had cracked down on. But yeah, so I mean, there are real Mossad sleeper cells in Iran, but I just don't in Iran. But I just don't think there are Iranian sleeper cells in the U.S. And I mean, these are like the fantasies that I mean, I may be wrong.
Yeah, I
maybe
mean, like
there
every
is. But
accusation is a confession. I think, like, a lot of these claims that they make are just basically to distract that's what they are actually doing. Iran, how many wars and regime change and color revolutions has somewhere like Iran been behind, like, versus the US? So yeah, I mean, the history speaks for itself. If anyone's going to know which entity is really caused the most harm globally and is really a terrorist state, it's the US, like, because like look at our track record.
And the last thing I would say here about your Iran trip is that, I mean, of course, there are bad things happening in Iran, and the government might have bad policies towards its own population. But I think that's the function and the task of Iranian journalists to tackle. So when a foreign journalist goes, and especially in the context of the 12-day imposed war on Iran, then, when all these people are like, oh, why did you go and why didn't you criticize the Iranian government? I think it's just it's contextual, and your context is very different than the context of American journalists going there. In this, it's just very different, and I think this is the point that people miss. And I think you need actually like a lot of you need lived experience in a country like Iran, in a country like Russia, the U.S.'s enemies, to report on the internal problems for in languages, in Russian, in Persian, for the local audiences. But otherwise, I mean, and I think this is the point that people
That
often
was my
miss.
response to criticism like that as well. Like, I just went for a short time, and it was for that specific goal of to help show the world like what Israel and the US did to them. As far as like speaking about domestic issues and the government, I didn't think that that was really my place, like as an American. And what I heard again and again from Iranians there is like, we are more than capable of speaking for ourselves, of protesting in the streets, of demanding a new government, of this, of that. Like, we don't need the US or Israel to come in and impose it on us. I heard again and again just like the anger of someone like Benjamin Netanyahu broadcasting to the Iranian people, like telling them to rise up. Like, they were just like, who the hell is this guy to say what we should or should not do? I think I you know I heard a whole range of beliefs and opinions from the Iranian people of how much they support or how little they support the government. It's I don't think Iran is different to really any other country on this planet. Of you ask really anyone on the street or hear from that, everyone has a whole range of opinions and stances and biases. Like, so you can't paint it with a broad brush. And I think that the Iranian people should be able to decide for themselves. And of course, I don't think that there's any government in this world that hasn't committed human rights abuses. I mean, so I felt like as an American, like going to somewhere like Iran and seeing what I saw, uh, I was always just trying to compare it to what my experience was in the US. And we have probably the most horrific human rights abuses that are happening every day here, like in our jails, our prisons, with entities such as Child Protective Services, with the healthcare, education, homelessness, like the drug and alcohol epidemic, like things like this. So I'm not denying that, really anywhere in the world has domestic issues or problems or groups that are being harmed, but I'm still not really convinced that, I mean, the US isn't the worst offender, like on all of those. I mean, globally, but especially and domestically, it's just that the rest of the world doesn't hear about this because the crimes, the human rights abuses happening every single day are against our most oppressed groups.
The likes of AOC love to talk about the lesser evil in U.S. politics, being like, Biden is a lesser evil compared to Trump. But I think if you want to talk about lesser evil in a more meaningful sense, you can compare Iran and U.S. and be like, well, when it comes to how governments conduct their affairs internationally, Iran is definitely the lesser evil. I don't think there's any argument there.
Yeah, that's of course, and that's like what we heard from them too. They were like, we think like our flaws have really been, and things that like bad things that have happened here have been like so over amplified, and but the rest of the world doesn't hear about everything that we're doing well, especially in the context of these brutal sanctions that they're under, that people literally die from, of not being able to access medication, things like that. But people are, for the most part, seem to be way more housed, way more educated, have their basic needs met, and more politically engaged as well, like in comparison to the US. So that, to me, like at its face, it seemed like I mean, it's just my one like tiny sliver of my experience there, but it seemed like the people there are way more well taken care of than by their government, than of having their basic needs met, than here in the US. I mean, I work in the field that I work in now is literally with like the homeless in New York. So I know that, like, you know, it's not happening here.
My experience with the Iranian medical system, and I also have experience with the American medical system, is that in Iran too, I mean, it's a dual private public system, but at least in Iran, you have like a real public option, that there are public hospitals, and they don't give you the best care compared to the private ones, but still you have this public option not to go broke, and they're much more affordable. And education too, there is public education that the state provides for, and I mean, this is a global South country that has a lot less resources and money, but they're still providing those.
And I did make a video about this on my social media, but when we were taken to Evan prison, I mean, shocked to see that there was a fully functioning hospital there. and prisoners even are receiving all of their medical needs, including dentistry, and just like in comparison to the US, it's not happening at all. People regularly die in prison in the US from not being able to receive medical treatment and care. And if they do receive medical treatment and care, it's after a very long waiting list. They're receiving suboptimal medical treatment. They're having to pay for their medical treatment. And, most of our prisoners in the US are being forced to it's like penal colonies. They're being forced to work. It's slave labor for the state, for federal agencies, for local, and for private corporations. So it was, I don't know, I felt like even more I was interested in coming back to the US and kind of making these videos of what the reality here is in the US, because the US, obviously, their main strategy with Hollywood and media is to give this impression and portrayal to the rest of the world that Americans are living well, that we're all rich, that we have nice homes and all of this. And that's not the reality for the average American. The average American is not able to afford their basic needs. They're living paycheck to paycheck, if they even have a paycheck at all. They're being evicted from their homes. They're getting, they're drowning in student loan debt and medical debt. And I felt like I have to speak even more about these issues, because the world needs to know what's happening here.
That's right. Yeah, and I think we all appreciated those posts. And to end here, let our audience know that where they can follow your work and activism.
I mostly put my stuff on Instagram, and then I also have a Substack that I'm trying to develop more, and just trying to figure out what's next, because but the main platform that people can follow me is Instagram, and my Substack, which are both under the name Jennifer Kings.
Sounds great. Yeah, no, link to your Instagram
Okay.
on the description. And thanks a lot for joining us, Jen.